what was that experience like with death that you had?
Well, I was at the Portland Zoo in 2016 with my son Lincoln, and we were looking at the elephants. My daughter was not, con- conceived yet, and I said, all I remember was, "Honey, I have to go to the restroom." And I turned around, and the next thing I remember, I was in an ambulance yelling at the top of my lungs, "God, I saw God! I saw God! I saw God!"
Wow.
And so I guess my wife told me, interesting enough, like I always visualized myself falling when I
Hmm.
had my cardiac arrest, like just kind of, falling over like a tree.
Sure.
But she said that I stopped, sat on my bottom for like a good solid 3 seconds. And she was just looking at me like, "Babe," it'd be weird. Like, Will, like if you were just like, "Hey, babe, I gotta go to the restroom," and then you just sat on your bottom, your wife would be like, "Will, what are you doing?"
What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just looking straight. I had no, and then she said I just laid back on my back.
Wow.
And that's when I just died. My heart stopped for 16 minutes. And luckily, I had my cardiac arrest at the Portland Zoo, probably the single best place you can have a cardiac arrest. I mean, it's right next. I mean, we're talking a stone throw away from the hospital's, a stone throw away from the Portland Zoo. It's like next door.
Yeah.
And of course, we're at the Portland Zoo, so there's police officers there, there's the medical team there, there's the full staff there, like they're ready for something like this. And so they ran down and started shocking me, giving me CPR. And that's why I'm not brain dead, is because I had CPR given to me like very quickly.
That's good. Yeah.
So I had oxygen going through. And then, you know, uh, I always just feel so bad for my wife because they loaded me up. The ambulance backed in by the elephants in the zoo, loaded me up. And at that time, when they shut the door and drove off, my wife had to go to the parking lot and meet them, the ambulance, me at the hospital.
Hmm.
So the ambulance takes off. I'm still dead. So my wife's sitting there with Lincoln, our son, and she's just like, she doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
So as she's driving to the hospital, most likely I'm just dead.
Hmm.
And that's when I woke up in the hospital saying, "I saw God, I saw God." That's when I woke up.
Wow.
It was 16 minutes.
16 minutes.
Yeah.
What did you see when you
Well, I had a full conversation with a gold angel, and we're talking gold, a color I've never seen before. It was like draped in gold, and almost as if there was like water. It was like water kind of draped around this angel,
Hmm.
if you will. And I'm to be honest with you, I'm kind of guessing it's an angel. I don't know really what it was, but I'm like, I feel like it's a very good guess. I don't think it was God. I think it was an angel of heaven. And the angel had his back turned against me, so I couldn't see his or her.
Yeah.
Could have been a woman angel. Couldn't see the angel's face. And I remember it being a very heated conversation.
Hmm.
I remember being like really intense. And I remember sitting there, seeing myself standing there, and then seeing the angel. So I was like third person, and I knew I was dead. I remember having this like panic attack that I'm like, I'm dead. And it was the weirdest experience of my life. It's hard to explain.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing myself arguing with the angel, and I don't know what was discussed. To this day, I don't know the words that were discussed, but I remember it being pretty intense. So I always think sometimes either I was getting a lecture, you know,
Hmm.
or I was like begging to go back.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I woke up.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was very vivid, very vivid. It was completely black around the angel. So I don't know where I was.
Right.
I don't know. I was somewhere in outer space or in a different realm, of course. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I always like to say, like, Abraham's bosom is now closed, of course, because Jesus died and is risen, and everybody that was in Abraham's bosom went up to heaven.
Hmm.
And Jesus went into Abraham's bosom, of course. And so I always like to think that I'm like, maybe because Abraham's bosom is now closed and empty, I'm like, maybe that's where they took me to have that conversation. Like I was in the old Abraham's bosom, just, like, no one's here, but let's have a conversation. I don't know, maybe,
Wow.
but who knows?
One day you can have that conversation again.
Yeah.
What actually happened here? That's cool.
Right. And then I woke up. They had to put me under because I was very aggressive in the I was trying to get out of the bed thing I was in,
Okay.
the cart in the ambulance, and I was saying, I saw God, I saw God. And then I was also screaming, like, where's my family? Where's my family? Like, I kept thinking there was a shooting and that like people were shot and that my wife and my son were shot. So I was pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
And so I remember them sticking me with a needle and then they fell asleep and they put me down. And then the next thing I did is I woke up that night. My whole family was in the hospital room.
Wow.
And it was fully calm. It was really bizarre.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre. I woke up and the first thing I said, I looked at my mom. I woke up. I remember this like it was yesterday, Will. I looked at my mom, my eyes open, and I looked at my mom and I said, 447 Brookside Drive. That's my old childhood Eugene address. I don't know why I said that. It's bizarre.